right, folks. How many of you have heard of the company Crowds on Demand? Well, I got the founder and CEO with me today, Adam Schwartz, and it's going to be an interesting podcast. We're going to find out exactly how this was engineered, how this was funded, how the hell this even happened, if he's involved in all, if he's not, and maybe he could just help us connect the dots. Before I bring him on, folks, remember Ringside with Nino, baby, yeah, Ringside with Nino on Nino's Corner.tv is fire. The next Black Sheep Family community meeting, like to call them that, community meeting is June 25th at 5 p.m. June 25th at 5 p.m. Be there. It's going to be great. So we're going to talk war game, everything. Everyone shares their opinions, ideas, theories, and we have a good time doing it. And folks, if you're wondering what to do with some of your moolah, this is pretty good. They approached me and I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. It sounds like a good stock. And it's called OPWEF. Okay. I know it's kind of funny sounding, but in a world flooded with paper promises, gold has been a constant truth. It's held its value for thousands of years. And today, with everything shifting, the demand for gold is climbing fast. The BRICS nations are now signaling plans for a basket of gold-backed currencies challenging the dominance of the fiat money worldwide. That's why I think OPWEF Explorations is a company that should be on your radar. They're exploring for high-grade gold in Quebec's legendary TB Gold Belt, one of the most productive gold regions on Earth. Their properties are surrounded by some of the biggest gold mines in Canada. And right now, they're launching a 20,000-meter oil program, a major step in unlocking their potential. While historic gold production in the area and strong infrastructure in place, their position is very promising, folks. And while no one can predict the future, these are all the kinds of projects that have built wealth when the timing has aligned. So if you know, if you're someone who believes in the timeless value of gold and sees where the monetary system is heading, OPWEF and currently at 11 cents per share. Damn, 11 cents per share. It's really worth looking into, folks. I'm telling you that right now. I'm getting on it. Got to be ahead of the ball. All right, let's bring Adam in.
Hey, Nino.
There he is.
I'm here.
How are you, Adam, man? Thanks for joining me. It's a privilege, dude. Man, so what? First of all, do you have any affiliation with the No Kings protests? Are you giving crowds? Are you supplying crowds for this? Were you approached by them?
Well, look, I mean, Crowds on Demand is the largest protest company in the country, right? So we get approached by everybody. So we've been in business now 13 years, so we're pretty selective on the projects that we take on. That's not to say, so obviously we wouldn't do anything that's violent. We wouldn't do anything that's illegal. And I agree. A lot of people are saying, hey, if you block off a street without a permit, that's an illegal protest. And it is. So we're pretty selective. Obviously, we protect the privacy of everybody who reaches out to us, right? So even if we disagree or you think you're kind of being untoward in your request, we still protect your privacy because you have the right to anonymous free speech. And I want to create an environment where our clients are comfortable with approaching us. All of that out of the way, Nino. There's a lot of very shady stuff going on, less with the No Kings, but more with the anti-ICE protests that you saw about a week ago, right? There is a lot of reason to believe that some of this is being funded from abroad. Something that the media won't really tell you because they're really worried about getting sued for, defamation or whatever, is that there are certain kind of these shady billionaires that are alleged to be involved that have a lot of ties with China. Now, I don't want to get sued either, so I'm not going to name any names, but there's a gentleman I've been kind of hearing about who has a lot of ties to the Chinese government who is alleged to be kind of one of the funders of all of this.
So what I'm thinking here, Adam, also is that they're inserting agitators to really kick things off. And I think that's a big problem, especially for a company like yours. Like, you're trying to supply a crowd and you're like, all right, let's do a protest, let's do it peacefully, let's not obstruct traffic, let's keep within our bounds. And then they just insert agitators that kick things off. I mean, I saw a truck. Yeah, and then I also saw it, and I don't think this is your company. I'm not saying it is. I'm sure you might be supplying the meat and bones of the crowd. You know what I mean? But then they're coming in with trucks and dropping off face shields and
causing a big problem for anyone who's protesting peacefully, because the biggest enemy of a peaceful demonstrator is a violent agitator, because for two reasons. Number one, if you're these guys, these Antifa guys who are throwing Molotov cocktails or whatever, right? That stuff, if it's not handled well, could actually pose a violent physical threat to the peaceful demonstrators, right? I'm here holding a sign. There's another guy next to me with a Molotov cocktail. Who knows? That thing could explode in my face, right? So that's not good. Number two, it also puts you at risk in regards to the authorities, right? Because when the authorities are having stuff thrown at them, they're not in a position to easily be able to distinguish between a peaceful protester and a violent agitator, right? So what I've kind of been out there in the media saying is, it is incumbent for any group who claims to be a peaceful group to not only condemn it, but to distance themselves from violent agitators, report who those people are to the authorities so they can be arrested, because those are the people who are making you look bad. You see what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
The video you're showing right now, that's a peaceful permitted demonstration down a street, right? That's okay. Now, many of your listeners might not agree with all the message. They might say they're boneheaded. Well, that's okay. We have a right to disagree in this country, right? Where the challenge is, and where I'm kind of concerned here, is that these Antifa people, or whatever you want to call them.
Look at that picture, right? Can you see it, Adam?
Yeah, I see it. There's fires. Well, the other thing is, these people are on the left. They claim they're environmentalists, but they're burning electric cars. And I'm not a scientist or engineer, but what I do know is that the battery in the electric cars are extremely toxic and polluting. So when you burn an electric car, that's not an act of vandalism, that's an act of terrorism, because the toxic fumes infect people in the nearby area, and then on a more diffuse level, they impact the air quality more broadly, right? So burning an electric car is an act of terrorism and should be treated as such. So I have no patience. As a fan of peaceful protests, I have no patience for people who are out there using violence. I mean, I think I said this when I came on, a month or so ago on your show, is that in a country where we have the right to express ourselves peacefully, there's less excuse than ever to express yourself violently, right? If you live in an autocracy that doesn't allow peaceful protests, I understand people taking to the street, right? And creating havoc. But in a country like America, where you have a First Amendment right, the idea that people are actually taking violence, I mean, it's just insane to me.
So, I've heard of these protesters that have gone, they're getting paid. What's the average pay for a protester? Can you disclose that, or?
Well, sure. I mean, for peaceful protesters, I can't really comment on violent, because I don't know. I mean, I've heard different reports, right? But the reality is, with peaceful demonstrators, typically in the hundreds of bucks per day for a full day of protesting. And I think that's okay. I mean, look, I think there's a good faith disagreement on the ethics of compensating people to demonstrate. I always make the case to conservatives that conservatives should actually support this, because many, if you're a hippie with a trust fund, you can go out to as many protests as you want. You don't even get arrested if you want. Mom and dad will cover the bills. Right. But if you're a conservative, right, more likely to have a 9-to-5 job, more likely to have kids, a family, all that, you may not have the ability to go out easily to support causes that you believe in. But if you're kind of compensated, a couple $100, a couple $100 is enough to get you out there, but it's not enough to make you betray your core convictions, right? To all of your listeners, right, who are, I assume, mostly on the conservative side, how many of you would go to a BLM demonstration for $300?
They wouldn't go if you paid them 10,000. Well, maybe, I don't know.
Well, maybe look, there's probably a price at which people would do a lot of things, but just candidly, but I think that but the point being that just in terms of our field, we don't pay enough for people to betray their core convictions. We pay people so that they can kind of express their beliefs. It's enough to, cover
but
their.
If you pay people, this is manufactured, not organic. I mean, do you give them Mexican flags and picket signs, and is that like what you're handing out?
First of all, the Mexican flag thing is boneheaded, right? I don't know. I've been seeing them a lot, the Mexican flags, where it's like, well, the whole idea is that you want to be here, right, in this country. I mean, Mexico, you can always come back to Mexico if you want to hold the Mexican flag, right? And I love Mexico, but I don't understand the idea to, like, I would never take on a campaign where we're holding a Mexican flag because frankly it's ineffective. The idea of a protest, Nino, is two things, right? Number one, to raise awareness, and two, to convince people to think differently about an issue. What I'm seeing on my screen, Mexican flags and fires, are both turning people off, not convincing even people. I mean, there was a video that kind of went viral of like these two kind of people who look like what I described, hippies with a trust fund, blocking traffic, and a young African-American, lady who claimed to be a single mom was saying, I need to get to work. And he just laughs it off. He's like, work, what are you talking about? So that's dumb. Like, I would never take.
I think this is actually breeding more conservative voters.
No, I think it is. It really is, because conservatives, a lot of people who are liberal, they don't want this. They don't want this in their streets, right? So, and I say this myself as someone who does not in any way identify as conservative, right? But I want safe streets, and what we're seeing here is not that. Now, I think it's important, I love that you're kind of displaying the different videos, right? And it's important to highlight that there are a lot of peaceful demonstrators as well. And I think one thing I always tell kind of my conservative friends is, if you can't call everything a violent agitation. There are people who are sincerely opposed to Trump and who are demonstrating peacefully, and it's important that their First Amendment rights are respected, right? But part of that is,
and I agree with that. I agree with that. What I'm trying to figure out here is, I heard there's some people that have come out on Instagram, and I don't know if they're real or fake, but they're saying, hey, I was paid to protest. He goes, I stepped out of it because you went to this sketchy warehouse. It was a line of people. Yeah. You stand in line, you sign some papers, they give you a Mexican flag, and then you go into another line, and some people are being given like what looks like weapons or something, man. Like it's like a separate line. So could your movement be getting infiltrated? Could they be setting up shop right next to you and saying, okay, here's your stick or your brick or whatever, and they're like,
that's
whoa.
the worry. That's the worry, Nino, is that you have these people who, like I said, I'm concerned are being funded by hostile autocratic regimes. Because here's the thing, just to work your viewers through, you probably know very well, but these autocratic regimes, their people are always demanding freedom. They say, look, things are good in the United States. People have money, people have comforts, people have jobs, all of those things. We demand a better government, right? So what these autocratic regimes are always trying to do is sow division in the United States. And why are they trying to do this, right? It's because then they can go tell their people, oh no, you think America is so great? Look at the chaos in the streets, right? So countries like Venezuela, Iran, China, Russia, right? All they want to make sure that their people view America as a crime-ridden, divided country, right? So they're constantly trying to stoke division. So it would make sense that when they see a movement, right, like the anti-ICE movement, and they're like, okay, well, here's this. Well, we have to get this. That we want to instigate chaos, right? So it's really a concern for me, and I don't like it at all. And what really concerns me is that they could be using, and my understanding is they are using, a network of wealthy leftist billionaires in the United States to funnel their money.
To infiltrate, correct? Kind of.
To infiltrate, yeah, correct. I mean, correct. And they're doing it through what's called a Russian doll model, right? So the Russian doll is the net funder in the middle, and the little Russian doll, and the big Russian doll on the outside is the guy throwing a Molotov cocktail. So there's several layers. So they have plausible deniability. They have foundations, they have nonprofits, they have companies that work for them. And so they have an easy way of being able to fund this, very, very easy, and then kind of claiming, oh no, this is organic. Well, it's not organic in any manner. I mean, look, as I said, I believe in the principle of being able to fund Americans being able to fund peaceful protests, just like they can don't. I think of it no differently as donating to a candidate, funding advertisements, et cetera, et cetera. However, when foreign hostile regimes are coming into our country and siphoning money, I see it very differently.
So how do they approach you? They come with a big, large sum of money and say, okay, here's the money. Hire the actors, you keep a piece of it, and then you hire the protesters, and what, you put ads out on Craigslist, or how does this work? Can you disclose that?
It's not exactly like that, but not
close,
exactly
right?
Not like that. So certainly people approach us. I mean, again, we're the best name. We've also been in business for 13 years at Crowds on Demand, so we have a reputation. So when people come to us, they know they can get it done, and they also know that we'll protect their privacy, even if we kind of respectfully decline what they're wanting to do, right? Which is the case in this anti-ICE stuff, right? Where I kind of say,
but you are supplying crowds for anti-ICE, correct?
We are not. Well, I mean, we're not, because so in Rome, this is kind of where I came out last week, of saying that it was something I wasn't comfortable with, not because I think there aren't valid critiques of ICE. There absolutely are. As I said on your program last time, due process is critical. So if you want to criticize ICE for failure to observe due process, I would 100% support that and would undertake a campaign for that. My challenge is, what I said is, we would not be putting people into the streets to obstruct ICE vehicles, and we would not put people in the sort of operational path of ICE. If you want to do a protest outside ICE headquarters in Washington, if you want to respectfully make your voices known in that way, we would entertain those requests. But the problem is, and this is one thing that I'm working on in my business, candidly, Nino, is I'm trying to make sure that people know, hey, we don't want to do not only anything violent, of course, but we're also looking to make sure that everything that we do is not putting our people in harm's way. Right. So when you're out there, so even if you're holding a sign on the sidewalk, you're not disobeying any laws, but the guy next to you is throwing a Molotov cocktail, you're putting your people at risk, right? So a lot of the people who've come to us have really good intentions. They don't like what ICE is doing, and they want to raise awareness for it. Some of them don't have as good intentions, and that's not good. But some of them actually have really good intentions. But the challenge is, I don't feel comfortable with it because you're putting people at risk.
So do you know the organizations, your competitors, or whatever they're called, that are supplying the crowds?
Well, so we're kind of the first resort, right? Because we're easy, we're turnkey. The other solutions are a little harder because they involve having to fund advocacy groups. They involve like 6 different layers. You have money that has to flow to some billionaire, then to a foundation, then to an advocacy group, then to a company, et cetera, et cetera. So it costs a lot more money and is a lot more challenging. So we tend to be people's first call, but if we don't take on their case, then I assume they go to sort of a second option, which is kind of try to recruit people on the street, try to fund these different programs through advocacy groups. But 100% these people are getting paid, because when you're able to deploy 200 people with like a 15-minute notice at like 2 a.m., like that's like a rapid reaction force. That doesn't sound like kind of people who just sort of get
So
up.
you're doing this as honest as possible, and you don't want to take part in any of the shenanigans.
Correct. I mean, that's part of why I go on shows like yours.
Yeah, I commend you for that, man. Thank you.
Right, because I mean, not only do I want to stress that, and because I want to encourage two things, right? Like I go on liberal media to try to tell people, hey, this is not effective. This is not serving your cause. But I also go on conservative media to make sure that people know, hey, don't lob all the protesters together. And I also want to completely disassociate myself and my company from any of the sort of violent agitation stuff that's going on because it's so dangerous. You know, I want to make sure people know that has nothing to do with us.
So since the audit of the dismantling of USAID, has that hurt your business at all?
Well, look, I think that it's hard to discern those sorts of things because I think that USAID, I mean, I have to respectfully kind of disagree with some of the USAID cuts. I think that a lot of the work that they were doing was very impactful abroad. I mean, for not a ton of money in objective terms, if you compare it to Social Security, Medicare, defense, we were funding programs that saved millions of lives abroad and that countered the malign influence of Russia and China in Africa. I mean, this was something, you know, you look at a lot of these African countries that USAID funded. This is where our cell phones come from, right? All the batteries and stuff in our cell phones come from. So these are countries with critical resources that China is trying to steal, right? So by funding these programs, we have so much goodwill from the people in those countries. Now, is there waste? Is there abuse? Is there fraud? 100%. 100% it should be rooted out. And the previous administration wasn't quick enough, but I have to say I was not a fan of what I think they cut very quickly, and it was irresponsible.
All right.
Yeah, go on.
Right. Well, okay. So my next question is going to be is how long are these protests projected to last? All summer? But hold on. Before you answer it, hold on, folks. I got to read a commercial one more time. All right, yes. Folks. Thanks, Adam. In a world flooded with paper promises, gold has been a constant truth. It's held its value for thousands of years, and today, with everything shifting, the demand for gold is climbing fast. The BRICS nations are now signaling plans for a basket of gold-backed currencies, challenging the dominance of the fiat money worldwide. That's why I think OPWEF Explorations is a company that should be on your radar. They're exploring for high-grade gold in Quebec's legendary Abitibi Gold Belt, one of the most productive gold regions on Earth. Their properties are surrounded by some of the biggest gold mines in Canada, and right now they're launching a 20,000-meter drill program. That's pretty crazy. A major step in unlocking their potential. With historic gold production in the area and strong infrastructure in place, their position is promising. And while no one can predict the future, these are the kinds of projects that have built real wealth when the timing has been aligned. If you're someone who believes in the timeless value of gold and sees where the monetary system is heading, OPWEF is currently 11 cents per share right now. Get on top of it, folks. Whenever I read brand new commercials, I stumble a little bit. All right, Adam.
You know, this is why we got to be nice to our Canadian friends, right? Because they got all the gold over there.
Are they funding you too?
Oh, well, look. I mean, you know, if I started talking about my clients,
right. Fair enough.
Part of why I mean, let me just kind of let your audience and you know why I don't talk about our clients, right?
There's a protection there.
Well, because the principle of what's called anonymous free speech, right? So, as someone who's a big opponent of cancel culture, I believe in the principle of anonymous free speech, right? So the problem with these transparency ideas is that what it does is it actually prevents people from being able to fund campaigns. Like I have many conservative clients, especially under the Biden years, who basically said, look, if it was ever linked to me that I funded these conservative causes, right? A lot of people said if it was ever linked to me, I could lose my job, I could lose my board seat, right? So a lot of wealthy conservatives actually use anonymous free speech to get around cancel culture. So it's not that they're not proud of their work; it's that the cancel culture is just a powerful phenomenon, and so I that's why I protect my clients. I mean, of course, if you go Google us, you can see a lot of stuff that we've been involved in, but I, as a rule, don't talk about our clients. If our clients want to talk about the projects that we've worked on, obviously they're free to do that.
So let's get to this. So, how long are these projected to last? How long have you been contracted for these protests? I mean, is this an all week thing? And is it going to last another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, summer? What are we looking at here?
It'll be sporadic. Frankly, I think it's going to be sporadic. Because I think people's appetite to go every single day is limited. So I think what you're going to see is it's going to peak at kind of tense moments. Part of it is up to President Trump, right? Because I think part of it is there's this ebb and flow, right? So if Trump does something that a lot of people are upset about, that generally leads to kind of a uptick in the protests. And then when kind of things calm down, protesters leave, right? So I think you're going to have it ebb and flow, but I don't think it's going to be every weekend throughout the summer. I don't think so.
Are you allowed to hire illegals? I mean, are they getting paid to do this too? I mean, you can get in trouble for that, right? I would imagine.
Well, I mean, I think any employer, there are rules on the hiring of illegal immigrants. We would never knowingly do that. We would never knowingly do that. Hire, people who are illegal, right? As I would hope most companies wouldn't. But obviously there are a lot of people who do. But for us, one of the reasons, though, Nino, that we don't is merely a pragmatic reason. Most people who are in the country illegally do not speak English, right? And English language proficiency is critical to be a protester because you need to be able to be a good advocate for a cause.
Yeah, but they can still hold up a sign with English on it.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm looking for, honestly. I want people who are articulate and passionate and who believe in the cause. And so somebody who doesn't speak English is not going to be a good advocate for me. So English language proficiency is critical for us. But it's interesting, though, a lot of Trump donors have who are in the hotel industry and the farm agricultural industry have persuaded him to stop the deportations in certain places. I don't know what you think about that.
I didn't know about that. You want to explain?
Yeah. Well, basically, of course, a lot of wealthy Trump donors who are very wealthy business people who kind of employ a ton of illegal immigrants, hotels, farms, manufacturing, all that. A lot of them have actually persuaded him. He recently announced just a few days ago that the raids on farms and I think hotels were going to be stopped. So I
didn't know that at all.
Yeah. So I don't know what you think about that, but it's
Well, I don't think there can be any hypocrisy here. I mean, it's you can't do what's good for some and not for all, and not what's good for what I mean. Everything's got to be equal. If you're gonna this to me is very sketchy. If you're asking me, I don't like that one bit.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion on it, just personally, as a liberal, right, but a moderate liberal, is I say anyone who's been convicted of any sort of violent crime, I want them all out immediately, right?
Agreed.
If you any kind of violent crime whatsoever, I want to get them first, right? I want them out yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, get the hell out of our country if you've committed a violent crime, right? Number two, if you've committed another crime like DUI, theft, vandalism, whatever. Any kind of those people, get them the hell out as well, right? Then, but I think we have to have a serious conversation about all these people because he's like, what I don't like is him picking winners and losers, right? If he wants to say, hey, we're going to focus on the baddest, nastiest, violent offenders, I agree. But you can't say, oh, well, my friends have a bunch of farms, so we're not going to.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that to like maybe help stabilize the economy and not crash it. especially with farms and hotels and probably factories. But still, I mean, you can't have a contradiction. There can be no contradiction or hypocrisy here.
Well,
you either go all in or you don't, right?
Correct. And I think I think consistency. I mean, I think Trump is interesting because he's this sort of mix of, a kind of very hardline conservative. He has part of himself that's kind of a hardline conservative, but I think part of him really wants to be liked by a lot of his donors, the donor class, the elite, right? Because he's always someone who felt like he never was accepted by the elite, whether, he's from Queens, even though he grew up wealthy, I think he's always kind of looking for the approval from those people. So it's interesting. I mean, I just wanted to be consistent regardless, but personally, if it were up to me, focus on the violent people first. Like, I don't want housekeepers, nannies, farm workers deported if they're just doing their jobs, but I don't want him to pick favorites. I just want him to get the violent people the hell out of this country today.
If anybody has a question, you can ask a question to Adam. Are you okay with that? Questions, if anyone has a question, you can super chat it. We'll be here for a few more minutes, so get your super chat in now if you have a question for Adam. Anything that I've missed, that if you have a question, go ahead and ask away. He's open to that. So you're saying that this is going to be sporadic for how long? Sporadic for a year?
I think indefinite because as long as Trump is president, Trump is going to continue to do things that trigger the left, right? I mean, some of those things are purposeful. I mean, Trump is a very savvy media communicator. In many cases, he does these things to trigger the left, right? And now, if you're a supporter of his, you could say, well, he's just helping the left show their true colors, right? But he's trying to trigger them, whether it's the university cuts, whether it's U.S. aid cuts, whether it's this the ICE crackdowns. I mean, that's what he's interested in doing. I mean, whether you like him or dislike him, he at various opportune moments is going to pick times where he wants to trigger that response, because Trump is probably the single most savvy media president we've ever had, right? Whether you like him or dislike him, he's a brilliant media tactician. So when there is a media story that is unfavorable to him, he is going to try to use the powers of the presidency to trigger something like this to then move the story, right? What were we all talking about before the anti-ICE protests? His spat with Elon Musk.
Yeah, right. That was just a day before. Boom, that happens, and then boom. Right.
Trump's a very savvy media.
What's your theory on that?
So my theory is that Trump is a very savvy, intelligent media communicator. I mean, I hate when people refer to him as a buffoon or an idiot, because he's very selectively intelligent. He's not a policy wonk, that's for sure, but he knows media. There's one thing he knows, and it's that. So if he sees a media cycle that is not to his favor, such as the issue over the text messages or this Musk thing, he will then announce some sort of policy that he knows is going to enrage.
So, and steal the media cycle.
Correct. So what he'll do is he'll do that. And then what happens is these people call me and say, hey, we want to take to the streets. We gotta get in the streets and get people activated. Right. And then, so what I would prefer is to not have that back and forth, and to instead have more policy driven discussions. Right. But the thing is, Trump really isn't a policy guy. He's a media guy. So
right.
He's playing, like, does he care about illegal immigration? Like, sort of, but he's mostly a media guy. He's trying to maximize his perception in the media and minimize the sort of negative perception. So he's effectively used, but the thing is, he knows the left, and he knows the left is triggered easily. So he knows exactly the kind of thing that's going to get them really agitated.
So if you had a crystal ball, or if you could tell my audience what to expect from here, are the Muslims going to join the party? Is that what's coming down the pipeline? I mean, what what protests could we be looking forward to seeing in the next month or two? I mean, I'm sure you're getting inquiries or something on like, hey, we need a protest for this or that.
I've seen Muslim Americans actually increasingly join with the Republican Party, which is everyone kind of says, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. But it actually makes sense because I think the assumption is that Muslim voters are voting on foreign policy when in most cases Muslim voters are voting on domestic policy where they want safe streets, right? A lot of Muslim voters are very number one, patriotic people, and number two, they're small business owners, right? So small business owners are the most impacted by onerous regulations, by high crime, by all of these things, right? So a lot of Muslims, I'm pretty sure he's at 50% with Arab Americans. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So if you're referring to sort of the Israel stuff, I mean, you have to keep in mind most of the Palestine demonstrations is not coming from Muslims. It's coming from kind of social justice activists or self-proclaimed social justice activists, right? Now, not saying that you can't care about Palestine, but most of the people who are turning out, they don't know anything about Palestine, right? Just, I mean, in fairness, that's true on both sides. I mean, most people on the Israel side, I mean, they don't know anything about Israel, right? They're just there because they're told to be there, you know. And of course, we are always approached, but the peak of that was probably about a year and a half ago with the Israel-Palestine stuff. That's definitely gone down.
Now you got Iran. You got Iran and Israel right now. So
yeah, we're gonna see more on that, I'm sure. But I mean, look, I'm tend to be an optimistic person. I'm not that worried because I think that people are going to cooler heads will prevail. I mean, even if you look at what happened in Minnesota yesterday, I think it was, or Saturday.
Right.
I think it was Saturday, sorry. Very, very tragic. But I think unfortunately a lot of these things are actually personal grievances that the national media makes into political problems. So it seems like this guy, the suspect in this case, had a personal grievance with the people he allegedly murdered, right? So it all seems very more personal. I do feel that politics has driven us apart. I mean, and I know people's kind of next response is like, oh, well, you pay protesters, like, aren't you part of the problem? But I don't really see it that way because what our protests always try to do is actually bring people together and convince people and have.
The point also is you don't just supply to the left, you supply to the right.
Yeah. Oh, we do. And I love common sense. I consider myself a common sense liberal, which is often means conservative, especially in the big cities today. You know, so I constantly am making common cause with conservatives because even there are too many moderates on the Democratic side they're just too weak. You know what I mean? They know what the right thing is to do, but they lack the courage to do it. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if I were the sheriff, I would say no open air drug use on my streets, no matter what. If you do it, I will round you up and I will give you a choice between spending time in jail or getting the hell out of my city. If we see you back in the city, we are going to make it very unpleasant for you. You know what I mean? But see, the moderate Democrats don't do that, even though they agree. Like in private, they'll be like, yeah, Adam, I agree with you, but they won't actually do it. So I end up making a common cause with conservatives over a lot of these issues, you know, because I think conservatives understand it, that you need something a little harsher. So anyway, back to my point is like, I think that, like, I feel like I'm very blessed. I have really good friends on MAGA, really good friends on the left, and I tease them all on different things. I mean, you know, because it's important, but like your friends, and you have to focus on your friendships. And I just see on, like, when I go on Twitter, so many people on the right and the left who are like, oh, I won't talk to my family.
Yeah, very polarized.
And I'm just like, don't do that. You know, it's not gonna get you anywhere. You know, you can either agree that you can tease each other or worst case, agree not to talk about politics and talk about whatever it is that you do agree on. I mean, like you're a boxer, right? Like you probably have a lot of friends who disagree with you politically, but are really into that world, right? So, and that's okay.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, to me, everyone has their own opinions, whatever. We're all entitled to it here in America, and that's why I like having people like you on. Gosh, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what's coming next, man. That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Because I know it's all very organized, very manufactured, and I would think if anyone would know, it would be you.
Oh, it is manufactured. There's no such thing as an organic protest. I mean, like, but like, let me give you kind of two examples of where that can go in a different direction. Because what I say also is funding protests is what I call sort of like a catalyst, right? It'll elevate a protest so that you kind of get it off the ground. But if it doesn't resonate with people, it's not going to go anywhere. So here's a good example: the Tea Party. When the Tea Party, it was funded by the Koch brothers and other very wealthy conservative billionaires. Got a ton of airtime on Fox News, etc. But the thing is, the Tea Party grew because of the fact that it resonated with people. So if the Koch brothers and others hadn't funded it, no one would have ever known. But it resonated with people. Conversely, like look at Jeb Bush. I mean, how much did that guy raise? Like $200 million, and it was like 2%, right, in 2016. So the reality is that money can make sure people pay attention to you. So what money does is it makes sure that people listen to you, but the ultimate work is then up to you to make sure that you get it to the next level, right? So it still has to have wings. You can help the bird fly, but the wings have to still let it fly. So so that's what I always kind of say in regards to kind of funding activism. I mean, everything's funded. Like I think that
it's kind of like learning how the sausage is made. Like nobody really wants to know, but the truth is, nothing's organic.
Yeah, nothing is organic. So instead of getting kind of obsessed with that fact, focus on the issues and focus on the people. I mean, number one, if people are doing acts of violence, focus on them. What they need to do is also figure out they need to go up the food chain, though, a little bit, because you can arrest an agitator, but you do need to go up the food chain. And I say this again, as the biggest peaceful protesting company in the country, I want them to find who is funding this violence, because those people are very destructive. But I do think it's going to taper off a little bit. But you're going to have other points where it peaks. So I think, but I do think I think some blame has to go on both sides, because I think Trump knows how to get the left into the streets. And,
yeah, he knows how to pick a fight.
And when he does that, like if you jump into the zoo with the lion, right? The lion is gonna probably come and think you're lunch, right? So it's the same kind of thing. There are things that Trump knows are going to aggravate people, and he does it purposefully. Now, of course, he has the right as president to do some of these things, and that's fine. But the question is, the question that I think Trump has to answer is, does he want to actually be a president for all Americans or not? Because
I don't think you could do these mass deportations and then have exceptions. But guys that work at farms, yeah, if you work at a hotel, don't worry about it. Come on, man. I'm sorry. I'm disgusted with that. I'm disgusted.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So it's right to kind of say, hey, I think people on the right have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I do that very well.
Consistent, and when he fails to kind of protect free speech as well, because I think that he is a prickly guy. He does not like criticism, right? Which is fine, but in the context of being president, you're going to be criticized, right? Like, and you have to learn to distinguish legitimate criticism from violent agitation. So I think that's important, but I have no patience for anyone who's engaging in the violence, because it's like it's the most you're actually doing the most damage to your own cause. You know what I mean? Like my message to the violent demonstrators is all you're doing is making more MAGA voters in the most liberal cities possible. You know what I mean?
Nobody wants to see this in their cities, man.
Well, the funny thing is these guys are too cowardly to actually so what's funny is these agitators, they're burning up LA, which is, you know, downtown LA, which I'm pretty sure downtown LA as a neighborhood votes 80% Democrat, right? So they are too cowardly to go to Arizona, to go to
And they're ruining their own neighborhoods, dude. They're ruining their own neighborhoods.
Yeah, correct. So it's like, but they're too cowardly because believe me, if those guys went to Mississippi burning things, what do you think is going to happen?
And I must say, Dale's Donuts is getting a lot of exposure.
Wow. Okay. Well, good.
I mean, I see them everywhere. I'm like, wow. Jeez. Adam, I guess that's all the questions I got, man. I mean, I tried to get more out of you, but I think it's fair. What you said was very fair. And I commend you for coming on, bro. Thank you so much. Adam Schwartz, founder and CEO of Crowds on Demand, telling it the way it is. I mean, folks, I asked the questions and he answered them. You got to give him props for that. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining me, man. God bless you.
You know, yeah, you have a good rest of your day.
God bless you. All right. Thank you. Alex.
Nino. Got a skylight shining in my face.
All right, but what do you think? I mean, you know, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, he's just telling you plain and simple, it's business, and we don't fund the violence, and it looks like they're being infiltrated. I don't know. I'll let my audience decide from there, and that's that. You know, that I mean, there's really nothing more I can get out of him, and he was honest, Tim, as far as I can see. And what really kind of made me think twice was the whole Trump exempting farm workers and hotel workers. What is that? You know, what is that? That's the first time I've heard of that. So maybe my audience wants to look into that and tell me what you think.
Yeah, man. No, this was really great to get Adam. Just really, whether you agree with it or don't, or you support this side or that side, that's not really what's important here. It's good to be aware of this, that this kind of thing is real, that it's going on, make other people aware of it so that we can just, and you know, he has a really interesting perspective though, just about how it is true that, you know, you can fund it in the beginning, but a movement can only be carried so far if it really has force to it. So,
right. Yeah, I agree.
And you know, there's some truth to that. And there, like you were mentioning, this happens a lot of times nowadays with people, you know, social media and other channels that get, you know, they pay for followers in the beginning and they get the ball rolling, and then they're,
true. I
so
guess they do that.
You know, it happens. And I don't know, it kind of reminded me of that and some other stuff.
It kind of reminded me of that as well. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I did what I had to do. Also, folks, don't forget OPWEF, whatever. Get there and get a stock in that. It's 11 cents per share right now. The link is down below, and it's worth it. Yeah, got to stay ahead of the ball, folks. Thank you for joining me. I did the best I could. Folks. God bless. Signing out. Later.